Hey everybody, Drilling in the Name of here. So I posted a video recently titled EPC Mining Is Dead. Now I know this goes without saying, but this is an extremely controversial topic and possibly the most divisive aspect of DRG. The reaction to the video was equally divisive, and I found myself responding to a lot of comments, either to correct things I didn't make clear in the video, or to simply just respond to the detractors of my arguments. I realized I was spending a lot of time responding to a lot of the same things, so I decided after a couple weeks of it, I wanted to revisit the nerf, address in one space the most common argumentative points that I've read, and settle on what I think would be the best compromise for all parties if TCF were to change in the future. There are a couple things I wanted to straighten out right away, with the first being the title. I realize in hindsight that saying EPC Mining is Dead was a bit of an exaggeration. I know that it is still very effective at mining large minerals like a quark and jadis,
Jade is here.
knocking down larger items like lost gear and cargo crates, and helping you get to fallen teammates that are out of reach. But those clips really were my first experience with Update 34, and I just really wanted to capture my initial reaction to the change. The second thing, and this is infinitely more important to understand, is this has all happened before. EPC mining in its current state is actually what it looked like originally. Take a look at this video from YouTube user LokiMutt that was posted in December of 2019, shortly after Update 25. As you can see, minerals scatter in seemingly random direction and velocity just as they do now. Here's another example from a YouTuber named There's a Maggot from November of that same year. And I have to be honest, the effect actually looks less extreme in its original iteration than it does now. Ghost Ship Games eventually made the change so that minerals drop in a nice neat pile as a quality of life update at the request of the community.
Also, in a recent update, the mineral collisions were updated, so they pass through each other. So now everything is dropped in a clean, neat stack rather than exploding all over the cave.
So I think a huge and honestly underappreciated reason people are unhappy with this update is that it's essentially reverting a quality of life change that was made based on feedback from the community. With that out of the way, let's put EPC mining to bed. So after a couple weeks of testing it out, it honestly feels just as bad as it did when I first reacted to it. Actually, even worse. A Reddit user named Goat the Minge commented on that video saying they were surprised that I didn't get any clips where I was the client and not the host. And wow, it looks way more insane as the client. The slight lag actually makes it appear as if the minerals drop into that nice neat pile for just a split second and then explode into all directions. I don't want to spend too much time talking about this, so I'll just let these clips speak for themselves. So it really should come as no surprise that I don't find this to be an adequate solution to the alleged problem. And as I mentioned earlier, a good number of people disagree with that, so I'd like to take a moment to address some of the arguments from the other camp, starting with what is probably the most common.
Mining is the scout's job.
I know Deep Rock is 100% its own thing, but I guess when I think of the role of a scout, I generally think of it in terms of scouting. So maybe it's worth taking a look at what that typically means. This seems like a job for the standard dictionary of facts. Let's see here. Scout. A soldier or other person sent out ahead of a main force so as to gather information about the enemy's position, strength, or movements. Yeah, that sounds about right. The role of the scout is to scout ahead, meaning check out a new room before the rest of the team enters, highlight enemies like cave leeches and spitballers, light up the... damn it.
Flares recharging.
Scout, little help.
Lights up!
Thanks. And light up the cave so the rest of the team can see what they're doing. I know that last one seems really obvious since scouts have a tool specifically to do that, but I actually have to remind scouts pretty often to do it. Look, I've got an old ass monitor, and a lot of times I can't see anything without some proper flares on the ceiling. Besides scouting, the scout is also great at kiting enemies away, taking out high priority targets, and using their mobility in clutch situations when the rest of the team is down. But if you really want to talk about mining in the scout, what about the secondary mission types? Scouts most definitely are the best at finding and obtaining things like bulo caps and ebo nuts, and those things can't be EPC mined. Those situations are perfect for the skill set of the scout, but mining in general is certainly not the main function of the scout class. In fact, mining is just everyone's job. It's kind of weird to me in a PvE game when the argument gets to be kind of competitive almost. Everyone gets resupplies from Nitro, everyone gets the same amount of credits from mining gold, and everyone gets the same amount of XP for mining. Mining minerals is important, but who mines them shouldn't be. Which brings me to the next point.
Mining is the game.
Mining is integral to the game. That should go without saying. I think a lot of people took me saying mining is the mundane aspect of the game to mean that I think it's the unimportant aspect of the game, but that's really not what I meant. I think where we may actually disagree is that EPC mining eliminates mining altogether. Personally, I always stop to think about what the baseline challenge of a task is. Clicking on a vein of minerals a bunch of times is not the challenge of mining. The challenge is finding the minerals in the first place, which is also why the scout is so important. If the team is short on nitra and needs a drop, for example, the scout is typically the one zipping around looking for more, but once the minerals are found, what is challenging about obtaining them? And isn't a tricky EPC shot to the roof of a cave actually more challenging than just tossing up a platform and standing on it? Maybe the issue is less that the EPC makes mining found minerals too efficient for the driller, and more that the other three classes have no way of mining more efficiently. Ultimately, I don't understand rewarding players who have spent enough time with the game with a tool and method for mining more efficiently, which, by the way, has a pretty steep learning curve and isn't explicitly taught by the game, and then punishing them not by making that tool and method less powerful, but by simply making it really annoying. Speaking of what annoys people,
Drillers EPC mine everything.
Honestly, as an argument made by people in favor of the nerf, this makes no sense to me. From the comments I've read, what annoys a lot of people so much about drillers who EPC mine is they'll use it for everything, even minerals that are near the floor and well within reach. However, as I mentioned in the EPC Mining Is Dead video, this is really the only situation where EPC mining is as effective as it used to be. I completely understand why it's annoying to get blasted with a TCF implosion while you mine something, but I'm honestly now more likely to use EPC mining in close quarters rather than a vein up in the ceiling because it's far more likely that I'm actually going to be able to collect all the minerals. Speaking of hurting your teammates,
EPC mining friendly fire.
as I just said, it is annoying to get hit with a TCF blast, but it's as or more annoying to get hit with a cluster grenade or minigun or satchel charge or fat boy. This is also a really simple fix in my mind, just remove friendly fire and give a damage penalty to thin containment field. If the autocannon doesn't have to hurt your teammates, the EPC doesn't have to. And last, but certainly not least,
It's not that bad.
this is where the debate starts veering into territory that I'm just not crazy about. This is one of the most common things people say about the nerf, along with it's not that big of a deal, and this type of discourse really turns me off for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's just really dismissive. This entire debate is extremely subjective, so to tell the people that are unhappy with it to essentially just get over it because it's not that bad is dismissive of our personal experience, which is just as valid as yours. I'm nearing 700 hours in Deep Rock, so my opinions are deeply rooted and have been formed over a long period of time, so to dismiss a strong opinion I have about a key aspect of the class I play just feels kind of offensive. Secondly, it's just kind of a weird thing to say as a person who got the change they wanted, because obviously your perception is going to be a little skewed. If you didn't like or use TCF to begin with, it's a lot easier to see it as not that bad than it is for someone that spent a lot of hours getting good at it. Now, if I went into the update thinking it was going to be bad, but found myself kind of surprised that it actually kind of worked, then me saying it's not that bad, it carries more weight because I was expecting it to be. However, if you went into it expecting it to be a good thing, then it's a lot easier to see it as not that bad because it achieved what you were hoping for. At the end of the day, I think it's important to remember that we're all just a group of people trying to have fun, and the common denominator between us is that we all love this game, so let's just try to be respectful of each other even when we're in disagreement. So there have been a lot of suggestions about what to do with EPC mining. I went over a few of my own in the EPC Mining Is Dead video, and I do still think the most obvious and modest compromise is to simply reduce the amount of air distance the minerals are able to travel. After looking back at those videos from 2019, the original iteration actually looks like something I could deal with. But again, the issue currently is the effect is so extreme and ridiculous. However, after spending more time with it, I realized that my biggest issue with the nerf is that it took you from absolute control to absolutely zero control. The direction and velocity are totally random, and by taking away any sort of strategy to the placement of your shot, it actually really cheapens the skill. I mean, what's the point of getting really good at your TCF shot if it has no bearing on where the minerals end up? And this brings me to my final suggestion. Have the direction the minerals travel be determined by the placement of your shot. If you want the minerals to shoot straight down, shoot the top of the vein. If they're hanging over a precipice and you want them to fly to the left onto a ledge, shoot the right side of the vein. I really believe that this preserves the idea of minerals no longer falling into a nice neat pile while still giving some control over where the minerals end up. I think it's also really interesting because it adds an additional layer to the skill curve by adding importance to the placement of your shot, yet it keeps the early skill curve intact for people that are learning how to use TCF. Plus, this would have no effect on TCF's combat utility. Now, I'm no developer, and I don't know how hard this is to program, but I do know that when a Chronar hits me in the face, I sure as hell fly backwards in the opposite direction. So clearly they've programmed these sorts of physics to some extent. Feels good to get that off my chest. I'm gonna have myself a beer. And we'll pour some out for Carl. Rest in peace. If you're still here, thank you so much for sticking around, and if you like the content, please like and subscribe because I'm definitely going to be making more. Now that I've laid out my case, I promise I'll stop talking about EPC mining, unless something changes. But until then, I think all that's left to do is put EPC mining to bed.